Welcome to the eighth episode of the Asia Pacific Auto Podcast by S&P Global Mobility. I'm your host Gaurav Vangaal, and today we are joined by Tony Wang from China. Tony is our expert on the Chinese market and also the regional director for the APAC market. He leads the powertrain team, which analyzes the powertrain portfolios of car makers and closely monitors the CO2 and the NEV compliance, as well as the overall powertrain strategy for the car maker. So you already got the understanding that we are going to talk about the Chinese podcast today. Today Tony will help us to understand the expansion strategies of the Chinese car makers and what is behind the significant growth coming out of the China on the EV side. Welcome, Tony, on for the podcast, and thank you for speaking to us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gaurav. Today is my honor to have this opportunity to discuss with you regarding China powertrain market.
Okay. Tony, until now, whatever podcast episode I have recorded, all the analysts coming out of the respective countries has only one thing in common, that Chinese EV car makers are coming to their markets. And we would like to understand from you today that what is behind it, what is how the Chinese EV players are so aggressive in the global market and also in the local market. And can you put some bullet points and give it some rationale behind it? How it was a significant growth in a short time for the Chinese army?
Yeah, thank you so much, Gaurav. I think everyone is impressed so much by the evolution of China powertrain market in recent years as the electrification changed the landscape of China passenger market and the powertrain propulsion type significantly. For example, taking the advantage of the powertrain electrification technology, including BEV, PHEV, and REEV technologies, the domestic OEMs is getting higher and higher market share from 34.5% in 2020 to more than 52% in 2023. So in turn of Chinese EV market, it's quite sure that we see a significant growth in recent years. In 2015, the penetration of BEV at the passenger vehicle market only accounts for about 0.8%. But in 2020, it increased to 5%, while even though facing the headwinds of the impact of COVID-19, shortage of semiconductor chip supply, and upstream battery cell material price increasing issue, the growth of BEV market still had a solid surge from 2020 to now on. In last year, the BEV growth reached to more than 24% at the passenger vehicle market. We think now Chinese BEV market already successfully moved from the inception stage to rapid development stage in recent 3 years. Furthermore, with this solid growth base now, we expect that the BEV penetration will reach to 47% in 2030 and about 63% by 2035. So if we think about why the BEV market won such a significant growth in recent 4 years, here are some good points to answer for it. Firstly, from the perspective of government policy and regulation, the stringent dual credit CO2 and NEV credit regulation, and NEV subsidy and purchase tax exemption, this kind of the fiscal stimulus played an extremely role in supporting Chinese BEV growth in short term. Apart from above compliance regulations, the favorable road rights for BEV continue to be considered by local governments as well. In many big Tier 1 cities, currently we see the favorable road rights for BEV, such as exemptions during the traffic restriction period and free parking, and also the car license plate free for BEV in some restriction cities, which ruled by local governments also stimulated the BEV growth from consumption side. And from the perspective of the OEM BEV production strategy, based on our market research, starting from the end of the 2017, the OEM, including most of the domestic OEM and the JV OEMs, they all adjusted their long-term powertrain strategy, focusing and making investments more on BEV development, developing the dedicated BEV platforms and programs. They announced their carbon neutrality target in the future. Coupled with this, they strategized a clear electrification pathway, including the BEV production target and phase-out plan of the pure ICE vehicles in mid and long term. Hence, in the future, we see more and more dedicated BEV platforms launched into market and output more BEV models in the market. And from the perspective of the BEV technology evolution and the production cost down, China government is always encouraging OEM to engage in BEV performance improvement and cost reduction. In the future, we expected the key components, including the battery cell and the packaging, e-motor and the control system, the cost of them will continuously reduce compared with the current level. For example, OEM use the C2C battery assembly process or AFP battery to improve the battery energy density and reduce cost, respectively. Yeah. And all integrated the e-motor reduction, inverter, OBC, DC-DC, PTU, DC charger to a high integrated EX system to improve the efficiency and the reduce the production and cost as well.
Yeah.
And finally, from the perspective of the consumer demand side for BEV market, besides the household purchasing, car sharing and the city taxi market also is another important market due to the much cheaper used cost compared with ICE vehicles. So more importantly is that the BEV penetration is increasing, the acceptance of BEV is getting higher and higher. We also so glad to see that for those tier 2 and tier 3 and even tier 4 and tier 5 cities, they are now contributing the most share of the total BEV consumption. So we expect this will also support the BEV's development from the consumer demand side in the future.
That's a perfect rational, Tony. I think, but what we are currently noticing a slowdown in the EV market globally, and I think on the China side, do you have any specific commentary related to this? That there is a slowdown, and what would be the impact in the long term?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is an interesting question that we often discussed with our clients in recent months. Thank you so much for talking about this topic, Graph. Yeah, in 2024, according to the year-to-date actual sales data, it's true that we also noticed the pure BEV performance is below an expectation in China, while a strong upside growth for PHEV and REEV. But this doesn't mean that Chinese automakers are thinking, should we need to backtrack to ICE vehicles developments in the future? For example, JV's poor BEV performance is pushing them to rethinking in China for China. JVs like the Volkswagen, GM, Ford, Honda, Nissan, and Toyota, who represented the Europe brand, the US brands, and Japanese brand, respectively, are planning to work more closely with their Chinese partner. On the one hand, for example, they discussed with their Chinese partner to use their BEV platform to develop the BEV models. And on the other hand, they are also trying to develop the more localized BEV models for Chinese consumers by themselves. As number one question we just discussed. And even though the BEV may be performing below initial expectations, it's important to highlight that they are still experiencing strong growth in China, indicating that the market is expected to continue expanding in the coming years. Especially the BEV export will be expected to become another important driver for BEV growth in the future. And our long-term outlook for electric vehicles remains very positive, even though we adjust downwards slightly for mid and long-term BEV forecast. And because the government and automakers around the world continue to prioritize the transition to cleaner and more sustainable transportation, in China, OEMs are actively reducing the sales price of their BEV after too high initial positioning. and they will continue to adapt their sales price by cost down from the technology evolution and the massive production in response to changing the competitive dynamics, government regulations, compliance requirements, technology evolution, declining battery cost, and increasing consumer acceptance and the awareness of environmental issues are expected to drive the continued growth of BEV market in the future.
Okay, but recently I think we are also seeing the plug-in hybrids and the REX range extender EVs having a steep growth in the mid to long term. How you see it impacting the BEV forecast in the in the long term also?
Yeah, thank you, Graph. This is another interesting topic which developed in recent months as well. You know, after startup Lixiang Auto made a success in REEV market from 2021, BYD made another great success in PHEV market starting from 2022. We monitored that OEMs are shifting stance and embracing PHEV in China. The first PHEV an REV wave is led by Chinese OEMs such as BYD, Geely, Changan, Great Wall, SAIC, Chery, Dongfeng, and Lixiang from 2022. Those OEMs continuously developed their PHEV and REV technology and launched the new PHEV and REV models into market, mainly competed with JV's ICE vehicles and is winning lots of the market share from JVs now. So facing this challenge and in order to follow this market change, the JVs like Volkswagen and GM is also trying to develop and launch the PHEV and REV into market. These PHEV and REV vehicles of JVs will driving the growth of PHEV and REV market from 2025 with the second wave we expect. This will also drive the PHEV and REV to growth in midterm. Meanwhile, considering the life cycle of the vehicles from first wave and the second wave, the PHEV value will go flat around in long term. This is because in long term, we still expect the BEV will be the main powertrain propulsion type by most of the OEM, especially by JVs who will be more aggressively in BEV strategy beyond 2030. Because of the carbon neutrality, as a result, the importance of the PHEV and REV can be compromised and will be still treated as a transitional propulsion type and will grow and the growth will be expected to fall by that time. Thank you, Graf.
Okay, Tony-san, one very interesting question which is repetitively coming from the clients. How do you predict the CN7 China emission standard implementation? And do you see any relationship between the CN7 and the Euro 7?
Oh, thank you, Graf. So I think firstly regarding the implementation, the CN7 timeline is not mandated yet, as you know. We are always keeping eyes on this and they have discussed this with some emission-related clients. We expected the implementation time will be beyond 2027, maybe 2028 or even later. Because the reason is that, as you know, current is effective from July 2023 is already much stricter than the EU 60. And thus we expected that the government is now very careful to mandate the CN7 limits and the timeline. I think this is similar with the relationship between EU 6 and EU 7, that most of the limits are the same and they already have very little room to get stricter. Thus, to be honest, I don't expect there will be a big reduction on those limits of the N6B or the EU 7 did compared with this is EU 60 and the 6E. So furthermore, government also don't expect the significant impact on ICEs as it did in H1 2023 when CN6B was implemented. So even though the CN7 emission mandating work is already kicked off, but still at the beginning stage, we think there is no too much detail announced yet. And in terms of the relationship, we mandated for previous CN6 emission standard and old one before, I think government will also refer to EU7 for mandating the CN7 in the future, especially the significant growth of NEV. The new add-ins in EU7, such as the brake, tire emissions, battery durability, those will be also considered by government for CN7. Another relationship maybe should be considered in is that the test cycle, because the EU7 will still use the WLTC test cycle, while as you know, Chinese government created a CLTC test cycle for passenger vehicles. But now only BEV use this test cycle for E-range and electric consumption test. The ICE's HEV and PHEV still use the WLTP for emission test for CO2 and E-range and electric consumption test. This is a there is a rumor that starting from phase 6 coffee, next phase of the dual credit policy and CN7, all test cycles for them will be reconciled to CLTC, but this is not confirmed yet. And regarding the impact on our forecast, CN6B is already effective and stricter than the EU7 on some fields, and the BEV penetration also is already very high in the market. Thus, we don't expect that the future CN7 will have a very significant impact on our powertrain propulsion type forecast. For example, some related after-treatment suppliers think their current CN6B compliance technology can be going on used for future CN7 emissions with just a very minor upgrading. Upgrading. Yeah, thank you, Gaurav.
That's wonderful, Tony. I think this is a time to end the podcast, and would like to express our sincere gratitude for your time and willingness to share the insights coming from the China. We are truly grateful for your valuable contribution to our podcast show. Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Yeah, you're welcome, Gaurav. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone listening. Let's meet again in our next episode of Asia Pacific Auto Podcast by S&P Global Mobility.